The tranquil turquoise waters of the South China Sea have once again become the stage for a dangerous geopolitical drama. On the 12th of August, 2025, a seemingly routine patrol near the Scarborough Shoal escalated into a serious international incident. A Chinese warship, in a maneuver that has been described as both aggressive and reckless, collided with one of its own Coast Guard vessels. This alarming event occurred whilst both Chinese ships were actively pursuing a lone Philippine patrol boat. The very nature of this incident, a collision between two vessels from the same nation during a chase, highlights the chaotic and high-stakes environment now characterizing these disputed waters. The potential for miscalculation is dangerously high, and each encounter carries with it the risk of spiraling into a much larger conflict. The immediate aftermath saw the Philippines lodging a strong protest, condemning what it termed China's dangerous and irresponsible actions. For Manila, this was not an isolated accident but the latest chapter in a long and troubling saga of intimidation. The pursuit of their patrol boat was seen as a direct challenge to their sovereign rights within their own exclusive economic zone. The incident serves as a stark reminder of the power imbalance at play. China's vast maritime forces, a combination of Navy, Coast Guard, and a sprawling maritime militia, create a constant and overwhelming presence that smaller nations like the Philippines find difficult to counter. The collision, therefore, is more than just a maritime mishap. It is a physical manifestation of Beijing's assertive posture. This event did not occur in a vacuum. It follows a year marked by escalating confrontations. Chinese vessels have repeatedly employed aggressive tactics against Filipino counterparts, using powerful water cannons that have caused damage to ships, and more alarmingly, resulted in injuries to Filipino sailors. The use of military-grade lasers against Philippine aircraft further underscores the deliberate nature of this campaign of harassment. These are not the actions of a country seeking peaceful resolution, but rather one intent on imposing its will through force and coercion. Each clash, each water cannon blast, and each dangerous maneuver pushes the region closer to a precipice, eroding trust and making diplomatic solutions ever more elusive. The very next day, on the 13th of August, the situation intensified further. The Chinese military announced it had warned and drove away the USS Higgins, an American destroyer, accusing it of illegally entering what China claims as its territorial waters near the shoal. This direct challenge to the United States Navy signals Beijing's confidence and its determination to enforce its claims, regardless of international opinion. The incident involving the USS Higgins demonstrates that the dispute is no longer confined to China and the Philippines. It has now squarely drawn in the world's foremost naval power, transforming a regional territorial dispute into a front line of global strategic competition, where the principles of freedom of navigation hang precariously in the balance. The Scarborough Shoal, a triangular chain of reefs and rocks, is more than just a geographical feature. It is a symbol of deeply entrenched historical claims. To China, it is Huangyan Island, an integral part of its territory since ancient times, a claim it supports with historical maps and records stretching back centuries. This narrative is deeply woven into China's national identity and its vision of reclaiming what it sees as its rightful place in the world. The shoal is a key feature within its expansive 9-dash line, a demarcation that lays claim to nearly the entirety of the South China Sea. For Beijing, control over the shoal is non-negotiable, a matter of historical right and national sovereignty that transcends modern international law. For the Philippines, the shoal is known as Panatag Shoal or Bajo de Masinloc. It lies approximately 124 nautical miles west of the Philippine island of Luzon, comfortably within the 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone granted to coastal states under international law. Filipino fishermen have frequented these rich fishing grounds for generations, viewing it as a traditional and vital source of livelihood. The historical connection for the Philippines is one of practical use and geographical proximity. The dispute came to a head in 2012 when a tense standoff between Chinese and Philippine vessels resulted in China effectively seizing control of the shoal, preventing Filipino fishermen from accessing the area ever since. The competing claims are fundamentally irreconcilable because they are based on different principles. China's claim is rooted in a historical narrative of discovery and control, a concept it seeks to project as the primary basis for sovereignty in the region. This perspective often clashes with the post-Second World War international order, which is built upon clearly defined legal frameworks and treaties. The Chinese view is that history precedes and supersedes these modern conventions, particularly when they are perceived as being imposed by Western powers. This historical argument forms the bedrock of China's unyielding position and its rejection of any external arbitration or interference in what it considers its internal affairs. In contrast, the Philippine claim is grounded firmly in the principles of modern international law, specifically the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS. Manila argues that proximity and the concept of the EEZ should determine rights over the shoal's resources. This clash is not merely about rocks and reefs, it is a clash of worldviews. It pits a vision of international relations based on historical hierarchies and spheres of influence against one founded on a universal set of rules applicable to all nations, regardless of their size or power. The shoal has thus become a microcosm of this larger global contest, a place where history and law collide with dramatic consequences. The legal dimension of the Scarborough Shoal dispute reached a pivotal moment in 2016. Frustrated by China's increasing assertiveness, the Philippines initiated arbitration proceedings under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS. The resulting ruling, delivered by an arbitral tribunal in The Hague, was a landmark decision. It was a comprehensive and resounding legal victory for the Philippines. The tribunal unequivocally stated that China's claims of historic rights within the Nine-Dash Line had no legal basis. This ruling effectively dismantled the cornerstone of China's entire legal argument for its expansive claims across the South China Sea, providing a clear legal framework for resolving the disputes. Specifically concerning Scarborough Shoal, the tribunal's findings were precise. It did not rule on the sovereignty of the shoal itself, as that was beyond its jurisdiction. However, it did rule that the shoal is a traditional fishing ground for fishermen of multiple nationalities, including those from the Philippines and China. Crucially, the tribunal found that China had violated the Philippines' sovereign rights by interfering with its fishing and petroleum exploration activities within its EEZ and by constructing artificial islands. By blocking Filipino access to Scarborough Shoal, China was deemed to be acting unlawfully, directly contravening the principles enshrined in UNCLOS, a treaty which Beijing itself has ratified. China's reaction to the 2016 ruling was one of immediate and total rejection. Beijing declared the tribunal's decision null and void and stated that it would not recognize or accept it under any circumstances. Since then, China has chosen to ignore the ruling completely, instead doubling down on its activities in the region. It has continued to build up and militarize its artificial islands and has intensified its patrols and harassment of vessels from other claimant states. This defiance represents a direct challenge to the rules-based international order. It sends a clear message that for China, power and physical control on the water are more important than the established norms of international law. This defiance creates a difficult and dangerous precedent. If a major global power can openly ignore a binding international legal ruling without consequence, it undermines the very foundations of the system designed to prevent conflicts. Other nations may conclude that international law is only applicable when it suits the powerful, encouraging a might-makes-right approach to international relations. The Philippines, despite holding a clear legal victory, lacks the military or economic power to enforce the ruling on its own. It is left with a legal document that, while powerful on paper, has proven ineffective in changing the reality on the ground, a reality dictated by China's growing fleet and unwavering resolve. The escalating tensions around Scarborough Shoal are not merely a bilateral issue between China and the Philippines. They are a focal point of broader geopolitical competition, primarily involving the United States. The U.S. has consistently maintained that it takes no position on the sovereignty claims themselves. However, it has a profound interest in upholding the principle of freedom of navigation and overflight in the South China Sea, a vital artery for global trade. The presence of the USS Higgins and the subsequent Chinese challenge is a clear illustration of this. The U.S. conducts these freedom of navigation operations to contest what it considers excessive maritime claims, reinforcing that international waters are open to all. For the United States, its credibility as a regional security partner is on the line. The Philippines is America's oldest treaty ally in Asia, bound by the 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty. This treaty stipulates that both nations would support each other if either were attacked. In recent years, Washington has explicitly clarified that an armed attack on Philippine public vessels aircraft, or armed forces, including those of its Coast Guard in the South China Sea, would invoke U.S. mutual defense commitments. This red line, as articulated by Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., raises the stakes enormously. Any clash that results in Filipino fatalities could potentially trigger a direct military response from the United States, drawing the two nuclear-armed powers into a direct confrontation. The international community is watching these developments with growing concern. Nations like Japan, Australia, and the United Kingdom have voiced support for the 2016 arbitration ruling and have participated in joint naval exercises with the U.S. and the Philippines to signal their commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific. These actions are designed to build a coalition of like-minded nations to push back against China's assertiveness and reinforce the rules-based order. However, many Southeast Asian nations, who also have claims in the South China Sea, are caught in a difficult position, balancing their security concerns with their deep economic ties to China, their largest trading partner. The potential outcomes are fraught with peril. A continued escalation could lead to an accidental clash that spirals out of control, a scenario that military planners in both Washington and Beijing are acutely aware of. Alternatively, China's sustained gray zone tactics could succeed in normalizing its control over the shoal and other disputed features, gradually eroding the Philippines' sovereign rights and undermining U.S. influence. The fate of Scarborough Shoal is therefore of immense significance. It is a test case for the future of regional stability, the durability of international law, and the balance of power in the 21st century. The ripples from this small collection of rocks will be felt across the entire globe.